This is how it begins, at the end of a long road trip, when that timeless question, by countless kids,
Are we there yet?
is finally answered. Every Saturday during summer on Move-In Day. That's when it's time to hit the water for wading and wake surfing, but mostly for wetting a line.
I don't think there's anything in the world better than getting a kid out in a boat with a pole, and whether you catch a fish or not, you know, there's nothing better.
Most of those who come here argue it would be hard to find a better place to fish in Minnesota than the Horseshoe.
There's fishing down home, but it ain't the same as up here. You kind of get spoiled up here.
A chain of 14 lakes fed by the Sauk River, winding its way around islands and inlets from Richmond to Cold Spring, 5 miles away.
We take our 3-4 pontoons we had and we go down to Schneider Lake with our customers. And why we weren't put in jail, I don't know, but we'd fill those pontoons with crappies, you know.
And pictures don't lie. From bulging baskets of panfish to stringers of lunker pike. Countless catches of the prized walleye and enough big bass to boast about on the bragging pole.
Well, I tell you, some of the stringers full that came in, you wouldn't, really nice fish.
When I think of a fishing resort, this is ideal. We don't want a hotel with a pool on the lake. The idea is to keep it simple, to encourage family to do things together. Thanks so much for the memories. The Clemishes, Prochevin, Iowa, resorter since 2000.
The family fishing resort on the chain of lakes first took shape in 1923.
My grandfather started the other resort.
When a man named Peter Paul Rugemer built the very first cabin on Horseshoe Lake. That would become the foundation for Lakeview Resort and Campground.
That was the first resort anywhere around here.
It came at a time when families lined the Highway 22 bridge with cane poles in hand to fish or small caliber guns to shoot waterfowl. When men fished the chain commercially and shipped their catches by the barrels full to markets in Minneapolis and St. Paul. At the close of market fishing in 1922, it was Peter Paul, one of 4 brothers from a devout Catholic family, who recognized the potential of drawing sports fishermen from across the Midwest to one of Minnesota's largest bodies of water.
At that time, everybody that came, they came for fishing.
They'd get up early, and then he had the only motor at the resort at times, and they'd line up, and he'd pull like 3-4 boats at a time down into Crohn's Bay and leave them there. And once you were there, you stayed. They'd fish, and then he'd go back again later in the day to pick them up to bring them back in again so they didn't have to row all the way out there.
Eventually, it would come time for the patriarch to retire from resorting.
And my dad took over, I think, in '33.
Even if some relatives thought it a bad idea.
My uncle, who just passed away, was the judge here. It was kind of a funny thing, you know. He told my dad, you know, when he was going to buy the resort, he said, "Jim, you're a damn fool. That lake is fished out." That was in 1933. I think he missed it by a few years.
Donald Rugemer recalls growing up on the water's edge.
Great. I loved it. It was, you got to meet new kids every year, new people every year, except that in those days it wasn't like this with air conditioning. We carried ice and wood and stuff to the cabins, and we had an ice house there. We'd, you know, cut ice out on the lake here on the river in the wintertime, and then that had to last all summer. So when we got refrigerators, that was a big deal. One of the owners of Island View here, and my dad built in that end cabin there, they built the last 16 or 18 cedar strip boats and then put fiberglass on them. In those days, that was before the aluminum and fiberglass boats, you know, and they built them right there. They had a farm and everything. Build them, put them in the water, and away you went.
In the 1950s, Don, now a young man, would meet Dot, the woman destined to become his life's partner in more ways than one.
We started working there, and right after we got married, we went in a partnership with my dad in 57 or 58, whatever it was, and we bought it in 65 ourselves. And then we ran it for another 20 years after that yet.
We raised 7 children there, so I mean, that was a good playground for them. New friends every week.
A playground, nonetheless, that would take some getting used to for a town girl not accustomed to water.
Oh, my mom would go nuts because she would always worry. We all had to, basically when we were born, they strapped a life jacket on us because she worried that we were going to drown. She grew up she was on the lake here with my dad, but she can't swim and she's afraid of water. So all those years she's watching all these kids, our kids, or not our kids, but us as kids, and all these people out on the lake, and she's out watching them, you know, just nonstop to make sure they're all right. So when they sold the resort, they moved across the bridge, and the first thing they did is they put a pool in. So now she's worrying about all her grandkids in the pool there. It's just kind of funny, you know, it's like, she can't swim, she's afraid of the water, let's put in a pool.
We ended up with about 15 cabins, and we would generally have them filled all the way through September and even into the first part of October. In fact, I had to quit duck hunting because couldn't go anymore, we were so full of people.
With Don and Dot running things full-time, the resort became the premier place at the lake for resorters, until the day in 1985 when they suddenly said goodbye to Lakeview.
Somebody made us an offer we couldn't refuse. Basically, it wasn't for sale. It just happened, you know. We had really never even talked about it.
By then, fishing vacations on the Horseshoe Chain were thriving, with no less than 10 resorts opening their cabin doors to families near and far. Peter Paul had laid the foundation well,